Welcome to the AEN Stories channel.
I used to think anniversaries were a kind of recalibration. You pick a night, you put on the shirt that fits you better than you deserve, you order the wine you can't pronounce, and for 2 hours you get to pretend that time is a circle instead of a line. I made a reservation at a restaurant downtown with white tablecloths and a bar made from some reclaimed wood that cost more than my first car. The maitre d' pronounced my last name correctly on the first try. It felt like a blessing. My name is Mark. I'm 46. I manage a regional team for a building supplies company. People call me when pallets don't show up or paint tints wrong. Julia and I have been married 18 years. She's 41, works in HR for a medical billing firm, and has a way of making the most boring things sound like a system you're lucky to be part of. Our son, Evan, is 17, a senior who can take apart a laptop and put it back together but still forgets to bring his lunch. He says he wants to study computer science. I think he wants to build a life that can't be unplugged without his permission. The plan was simple. I'd meet Julia straight from work. I'd gone early to check the table and ask for a corner because corners show mercy. I picked a bottle that I once promised myself we'd try when things settled down. Things never settle down. You settle around them. At 6:58 I texted, "I'm here. Corner by the window. You're going to laugh at the napkins." She replied, "On my way. Work fire drill." At 7:10, 5 minutes. At 7:25, "So sorry, traffic on 36." At 7:42 there was no message, just the server's careful sympathy as she refolded my napkin. The wine sat in the bucket like a pun I didn't get. She arrived at 8:32. You keep time differently when you're waiting for a person versus when you're waiting for a pizza. Her face said the thing people rehearse in elevators. "I'm so sorry," she exhaled, sliding into the chair as if someone had been timing her. Everything exploded. Payroll and a vendor, and she gestured a constellation of emergencies into the air. "It's okay," I said out loud, because the alternative is a lecture about cell towers and choices and what 30 minutes means compared to 90. Inside, something folded in on itself like paper. We ate. The duck was good. The server asked if we wanted dessert and I made a dumb joke about committing to poor decisions. We didn't stay for coffee. She said she needed sleep. I said I understood. We hugged like people who had made a pact with gravity. In the cab home, I looked at the city lights and told myself a story about a tough quarter and a woman who has always worked harder than people notice. A colleague of mine, Dave from purchasing, was at a table near the bar that night with his wife. I waved on my way out. He gave me a thumbs up that felt like a benediction from a fellow suburban pilgrim. 3 days later, Dave swung by my cubicle. He's the kind of guy who leads with, "Got a sec?" and actually means a second. He closed his mouth, opened it, then said, "Hey, if it makes me a gossip, tell me and I'll shut up." "But were you and Julia both there the whole time?" I felt the floor find my feet and then abandon them. "What do you mean?" He winced, apologetic. "I saw her earlier. Like, way earlier. I thought you were there, but then, when I saw you later I realized the guy with her before wasn't you." I stared at a sticky note on my monitor like it might translate. "You sure?" It came out softer than I wanted. "I can be wrong," he said. "I want to be wrong." That night I didn't ask Julia anything. I grilled chicken and asked Evan about his physics test and watched a show where adults renovate kitchens and felt the tightening of my chest in time with the montage cuts. After he went upstairs, I cleaned the counters twice. Then I sat at the table with my laptop and thought about how truth is a thing you can hunt and also a thing that will find you if you sit still long enough. I called the restaurant the next morning, asked for a manager. I didn't lead with drama. "I was there Friday," I said. "Our anniversary. Long night. I think there might be a problem with the timing of charges. I may have mixed something up." It was a Lyle with a harness on. He offered to check. I gave him my name. He put me on hold with Jazz and God. He came back and said, "I can email you your receipt." I said, "Would you mind sending the table log too? We're trying to track down a billing discrepancy for work, and I may have confused some timings." It was a stretch. He paused long enough for me to plan an apology I would never get to give. "Let me see what I can do," he said. He sent both. He also, probably because of a button I didn't deserve, attached a still image from the entry camera with a timestamp, a security feature they use for credit card fraud checks. 2 figures at 7:11 p.m. The woman's profile so painfully familiar that the screen felt like it was pressing my face into glass. The man with her was tall, not a stranger in the generic sense, but not a face my brain had filed. They stood close, the way people stand when they're in on a secret. At 8:31, another still, me, walking in with the bottle-gloss smile I save for the version of my life where things make sense. I closed the laptop with care because Fury likes to break objects that don't deserve it. I didn't confront Julia that night either. I have learned that some fights get staged to become a story you repeat to absolve yourself of the mess you made in real life. I didn't want a story. I wanted sentences that held weight. On Saturday, I asked her parents if they wanted to come over for dinner, nothing elaborate, just pasta and salad. We could do it early so Evan could get to his friends. Julia, to her credit or her instinct for control, said yes quickly. Her mother, Renee, is a woman who can weaponize a compliment. Her father, Victor, retired from the utility company and still has the posture of a man who believes in straight lines. I set the table. I boiled pasta. I set my laptop on the buffet and told myself I wouldn't open it until I could feel my hands again. Evan came downstairs in a hoodie and looked at the dining room like it was a stage set for a play he hadn't auditioned for. "What's the occasion?" he asked. "Your grandparents," I said. "And you," I added, when he smirked, "are a menu item." He grinned, reflexive, then squinted at me. 17-year-olds can smell emotional refrigerant leaks from a mile away. "You good?" "I will be," I said. It was both true and evasive. Dinner began with the choreography all families know, the pass the bowl, the housework, the aside about a neighbor's new deck that probably violates code but looks fantastic. When we were halfway through, I stood and walked to the buffet. "I have something," I said. "It won't take long." Julia's eyes widened, not with guilt exactly, but with the recognition of a fork in a road. Renee set down her fork like it was evidence. Victor folded his hands. Evan watched me without blinking. I clicked open the laptop. The screen glowed our faces back at us. I opened the email from the restaurant, dragged the still into the center like a math problem. "I wanted to show you something before we invent versions of it," I said. My voice sounded like I'd borrowed it from a steadier man. The image popped up. 7:11 p.m. Julia and a man at the host stand. The resolution wasn't high but the meaning was. No air left the room, it had already been thinning for years. Renee made an involuntary noise and then covered her mouth, rearranging it into a sigh. "We don't know the context," she said, a sentence that is technically accurate in a way that loses points at the rim. Victor didn't move. He looked at the screen, then at his daughter, then at me. His eyes weren't cruel. They were tired. Julia's throat worked like she was swallowing something sharp. "It's not," she stopped because the word nothing had to fight its way past 1,000 pixels. I didn't ask who. I didn't ask how long. I didn't ask if I had done something, or not done something, that could be repurposed as causation. There are questions that turn you into your own defense attorney, and I was not interested in litigating. "I know what I'm looking at," I said, keeping my palms on the table. "I know what time it was. I know when you walked into our table. I know what I felt." Evan stood. He is taller than me now. He doesn't use it. "Mom," he said. Nothing else. Just the name, like an affidavit. Then, "I don't believe you anymore." It wasn't a scream. Screams give you something to push against. It was worse. It was quiet. Renee reached for him as if proximity could rehydrate trust. "Honey, adults make mistakes," Evan finished for her. "I know. Mr. Santini says calculus is just a series of controlled errors you correct." He laughed once, it sounded like a cough. "This isn't calculus." Julia cried then. Not the cinematic kind. The leaking kind. "I am sorry," she said. "I am sorry. I am sorry." As if repetition could stitch a wound shut. Victor shifted his chair back and stood. He looked at me with a clarity that made my chest hurt. "Do you need me to take a walk with Evan?" he asked. "I need you to sit," I said, and surprised myself. "I need all of us to sit." We did. Even Evan, after a second, sat like a tense coil that had decided not to spring. I closed the laptop and put my hands on it. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "I'm going to sleep in the guest room for a while. Then probably somewhere else. We're going to find a counselor. We're going to figure out a schedule that doesn't make Evan feel like a package. We're not going to lie. We're not going to use him as a knot we tug on in the dark." Renee started to say something about forgiveness being a practice. Victor gave her a look that, after 2 decades in their family, I know means not now. Julia nodded, small, like a person who has been handed a list of instructions for surviving a storm she chose to stand in. "Okay," she said. "Yes. Okay." After dinner, Evan grabbed his backpack and asked if he could crash at my friend Mike's over the weekend. Mike has a basement that smells like stale Doritos and new carpet. "You can stay with me," I said. "I will," he said, "but not tonight." Subtext: I can love you and still want not here. I hugged him the way you hug a person who bristles at being handled. He let me. Julia slept at her parents' that night. She texted me an hour later, "I'll make an appointment Monday. I know I don't get to ask for anything, but if I can, please tell Evan I love him." I wrote back, "I will." He read it on his own. She wrote? He asked, already knowing. "She loves you," I said. He rolled his eyes the way a 17-year-old does when love has been downgraded by evidence. Monday begins the administrative half of heartbreak: phone calls, calendars, policies that are really prayers. I emailed 3 counselors and explained as little as possible and as much as necessary. I asked my boss if I could work from home for a week. He wrote back, "Family first. Take what you need." I don't know if he could afford to say it or if he believed it. He said it. It counted. Evan and I ate scrambled eggs for dinner and pretended it was a choice. We drove in silence to his school, then filled the silence with trash talk about his friend's busted Civic. Silence is only poison if you forget to open a window. Julia and I sat in a therapist's office Tuesday afternoon, in chairs that made both of us smaller. The therapist was the kind of woman who could control a room full of firefighters with a glance. She asked us to say what happened without making the other person the narrator of our story. Julia said lonely and then said angry and then, to her credit, said selfish. She said the name Greg, a vendor contact who became a lunch who became a lie. She said she had broken it off a week earlier, which landed in the room like a math error corrected on the wrong problem set. I said tired and then said blind and then said I don't think I was a bad husband, which is not a defense so much as a plea to the judge inside my own head. The therapist nodded in the exact way you want a stranger to nod. She told us 2 things: repair is not possible without clarity, and Evan needs a circle around him, not a tug of war. I wrote both down because I'm the kind of person who thinks a line on paper is a plank you can walk across water on. We drew a schedule that made sense on paper and felt like a divorce I wasn't ready to name: alternating weeks after school, dinners midweek with whomever he wasn't sleeping at, Sundays all together for an hour that might be practice and might be penance. We agreed to phones in the kitchen at night and to no passwords held like weapons. We agreed to tell Evan the truth without footnotes: there was an affair, it has ended, we are trying to see what remains under the mess, he is not responsible for any of it, he doesn't have to decide anything right away. When we told him, he nodded like a person reading instructions in a language he only half knows. "Can I still go to state with robotics?" he asked. It was the purest question. "Yes," I said. "We will high-five in shifts." At school, the counselors did that quiet, professional triage I used to think was just for other families. Evan's English teacher moved a paper deadline without telling him until after he turned it in early. His coach gave him an extra lap to clear the cache, which was exactly the kind of dad joke Evan pretends to hate and actually loves. My mom called and asked me if I was eating vegetables. Julia's mother texted me without adjectives, "I'm sorry." I wrote back, "Thank you." She sent a heart like a woman who isn't fluent in this dialect but is trying. Victor came by Saturday with a toolbox and a pack of shims. "Your bathroom door sticks," he said, as if this were news. We fixed it together. He didn't mention Julia once. He did say, as he slid the door open with that satisfying whisper of a solved problem, "Most things in a house can be corrected with patience and the right wedge." It was an apology disguised as a handyman tip. Evan asked to spend most nights with me for now. I told him it was his call. Julia took it like a person who had decided to do one hard thing at a time. She started going to sessions solo. She sent me an email with passwords and calendar access like a peace offering that smelled like reality. She changed her lock screen from a quote about hustle to a picture of the three of us at a minor league game from 2019. It made me want to throw my phone into the river and also to hand it back to her. There were bad nights. Nights where the house felt like it had a carbon monoxide leak of memory. I made too much pasta and burned the garlic. Evan and I watched highlights from a sport neither of us follows. He told me a story about a kid in his class writing code that crashed the whole lab. We laughed like people practicing a language. There were also good nights. We put up a whiteboard on the fridge with categories: dinners, rides, tests, feelings we couldn't name yet. It was corny. It worked. He wrote, "I hate this," under feelings, and then added, "I also like that we eat pancakes on Wednesday now." I added, "I like that you put the pan back without me asking once." Small wins have to be counted or they don't do their job. At some point, time does not wear labels. Julia stopped insisting on explanations as if the right answer would rewind anything. She started saying, "I hurt you," without qualifiers. She asked Evan if he wanted to see the counselor solo. He said yes, the most adult yes I've ever heard from a kid with acne cream in his backpack. My colleague Dave kept a respectful distance. One afternoon at the coffee machine, he said, "My wife asked if you're okay." I said, "Define okay." He laughed, kind. "Alive," he said. "Doing the things." I nodded. "We're doing the things." The restaurant manager emailed me a month later, some form letter about a customer satisfaction survey. I deleted it. Then I undeleted it and typed 2 sentences, "Your staff was excellent. Your cameras work." I didn't send it. There are closures that only exist as drafts. People sometimes ask why I didn't yell that night at dinner, why I didn't throw a plate or demand a confession for Evan's benefit, as if rage is a teachable moment. The truth is, I wanted to. The other truth is, the silence did the work I couldn't have. The still image was a scalpel. The room did the rest, the way Renee reached for the script and couldn't find it, the way Victor sat still like a man at the eye of a storm, the way Evan said one sentence that contained more adulthood than I had my entire junior year of high school. Noise would have given us cover. Fact gave us a floor. We are not fine. We are functioning. There is a difference and there is also a hope inside that difference. Julia and I are separated in place, a phrase I wouldn't have known how to use last year. We split the calendar. We cover for each other when life does what it does. We sit on opposite ends of the bleachers and both stand for Evan when he gets called up for an award. Sometimes we talk in the driveway after he goes inside, about the neighbor's renovation or the dogwood or taxes. Sometimes we talk about the thing we don't name unless we have to. Sometimes we don't talk at all and it's the best choice we have. On the night of our next would-be anniversary, I didn't make a reservation. I grilled chicken. Evan and I invited Victor over and watched a game and made fun of the announcer who can't pronounce anyone's name. At some point Victor got up to leave and then stood by the door and said, "You're doing right by him," nodding toward the kitchen where Evan was washing dishes to a playlist that would have made me a better man at 17. "That's the job," I said. He shook my hand and left like a man who knows when a door needs to be closed quietly. I still think about the wine sometimes, the bottle that sat in the bucket while my old life cooled next to it. I could turn that into a poem. I could also admit that a bottle is just a bottle and a night is just a night and the things that keep the house standing are the routine Tuesday choices you make after the big Fridays fall apart. If you're looking for a moral, I don't have one that fits on a coaster. I have a kid who comes home and tells me, "I passed calc," and eats half a loaf of bread. I have a woman who made a horrible decision and is now trying to make 1,000 small good ones. I have in-laws who cheered for me when I didn't know how to breathe. I have a colleague who took a risk and told me a thing that hurt and helped. I have a photograph in a folder I don't open, and I have a whiteboard on a fridge I see every morning. The whiteboard wins more days than not. Last week Evan and I were driving home from robotics when he said, apropos of nothing, you know how in programming, you can't always fix legacy code? Sometimes you just write an adapter and move forward. I glanced at him. Are we legacy code? He smirked. You might be. Then he added, softer, we're moving forward, though. We are? Some days it looks like 2 steps and a stumble. Some days it looks like pancakes on Wednesday and a door that doesn't stick. Some days it looks like sitting in the back row of a counselor's office while your wife tells the truth and you remember how to listen. Most days, it looks like showing up, which is not glamorous but is how bridges stay up. When I think about that night in the restaurant now, the strangest part is not the waiting. It's how convinced I was that good lighting and nice silverware could save a thing I hadn't been honest with myself about. You can spend a lot of money on atmosphere. The bill comes due in fax. What saved us, if saved is the word, was not a toast or a fight. It was a still image on a screen on the quiet after, and a 17-year-old who used his voice like a light switch. We're not back where we started. We're not supposed to be. We're somewhere else, messier, more truthful, less cinematic. The wine we drink now is cheaper and better because it's shared without hurry. The corner tables I ask for are in our own kitchen, on weeknights, with a whiteboard and a stack of bills and a kid who makes a joke about legacy code and then asks if we can go get ice cream. We can. We do. We're still here. Thank you for listening my story. If you want more raw, real, and gripping stories like this one, subscribe to the A.E.N. Stories channel. Your support keeps these stories alive.